Hi guys, welcome back. We are at the final lesson of this Logic Beginners course. I hope you've learnt a lot. We're going to be doing some mastering, or some basic mastering I should say, in this lesson. Mastering, if you're not too sure, is just the final polish, if you like, on the mix. We've done all the mixing. This is where you might want to add a bit of loudness. You might want to add a bit of top end. You might want to add a bit of low end. You basically want to reference some other tracks that have been commercially released, tracks that you really like, really respect the mix of, and perhaps try and match or at least get something near their frequency range. Are their hi-hats really loud and punchy? Is their kick really loud and punchy? What's the overall frequency balance of that track? And we're trying to get us a level playing field, if you like, on this type of track where the bass is not too heavy, the top is not too dull, or vice versa. Everything's kind of balanced across the spectrum. So there's no substitute for getting a proper engineer, a professional mastering engineer in on the job with his professional ears, professional equipment, and years of experience. You won't get any better results than sending your track to someone like that who's been doing it for years. But most of us don't have the budget to pay for that. So there are some tools within Logic that can help us get our track at least a little bit louder. So let's bring up the mixer. And I've already been having a go at this already. So the first thing in basic mastering is perhaps having a look at the overall EQ of the track. And you can see the frequency going from left to right. And you want to try and get a balanced level all the way across, unless you're going for a bass heavy dance track or something a bit different. So I've got my loop set up over the busiest part of the track, one of the choruses, and that's always a good place to start. So I'm going to turn on my EQ, and what I've decided to do is get rid of a tiny bit of muddiness at 250. You normally get a little bit of muddiness, if you like, or slightly unwanted frequency build up at around about 250. But I've only got this down 1 dB, so it's not much at all. And I'm just giving it a slight boost in the top end at around about 5K. Again, only 1 dBs. You have to be very careful on the final channel, the stereo out, because you've got all these channels going through it. So whatever you do here is kind of multiplied, if you like. You can EQ a single channel as much as you like, almost. But once you've got all your channels going through one group mixer, which is what this is, group channel, you need to kind of do much finer adjustments, otherwise you'll completely ruin your mix. So let's just have a listen before and after. This is before. Now you might be forgiven, beginners generally can't hear subtle, very small changes like I never used to be able to do when I was a beginner. But to me, that sounds a little bit brighter. Just brings out the vocal a bit more, a little bit of the hi-hats as well. Just 1 dB, quite a wide frequency band here we're using. I didn't want to boost up here at 8 and 10 because when I tried that in practice, it was just boosting the sibilants, the S's and the T's of the vocals. So we've kept it down here and reducing the muddiness as well. So you may not hear it. It's a small change, but it is a change that I have chosen to do. So before and after again. You can actually see that our frequency range up this end, if you look at the graph, is a little bit lower anyway. That sounds pretty good to me. The next thing you may want to consider on your stereo out is just an overall compressor on a very low ratio, 1.4, 1.3 or 1.5 to 1. So quite a low ratio, 1.5 to 1. This is even lower, 1.4 to 1. But a lower threshold, so you're compressing a bit more of the mix. But we're only getting about 3 dBs of gain reduction. So these are the kind of the figures you should be aiming for. And you can see there's hardly any, not much gain reduction at all. But it just gives the overall mix a bit more punch if I do before and after again. Just sounds pretty good to me. So that's something to consider. That's just going to tie the whole mix together a bit more as well. Just light compression with a lower threshold than you would normally do. But on to the main part of the basic mastering that we do in our tutorials, and that is to add a limiter. And some DAWs it's called a limiter, and some DAWs they do a slightly different variation, and it's a maximizer. But basically what we're doing here is getting more loudness out of this track without clipping. You can see down here that we're on -7.3 at its worst case. So we've got 7 dBs of headroom to play with. And this is because we started off with our very first track. If you remember the kick drum, we turned it right down. We've added all these other tracks, and that is what has set us up really well for mixing. This is why we've still got 7 dBs left of headroom. Don't forget that some things jump out, some crashes and effects, sometimes they jump out a little bit and spike the volume. So this is why we need to give us a little bit of headroom. And you can see we're nicely in the green and the yellow here. But when you compare this track as it is now to a commercially released track, this is going to be a lot quieter, because today's mastering, they tend to slam the volume right up and use this exact sort of technique. So we're going to add an additive limiter. You can get to that by going to Dynamics. It's like a compressor, but it's a very much bigger ratio than a compressor. And it's called Adaptive Limiter, which I already have here. And it's called adaptive because it's going to adapt to the ups and downs of the track, the dynamics of the track. So it's a really clever limiter. So when you load this up, the gain is normally, I think it's on about 3 dBs. I've set my output ceiling to -0.3. I haven't set it to 0, because when you bounce this track out and then you might want to convert it to a different format later on, the bouncing stage, sometimes you get the odd peak here and there. So it's always best to just come under that a little bit. And to play it safe, I'm going -0.3. It's saying to me, it's already analysed the track. It's saying that the optimal look ahead, we'll come to that in a second, is 20 milliseconds. So I've already applied 20 milliseconds. So what this is going to do, it's going to look at the peaks and the troughs before they actually play. So it's going to look ahead 20 milliseconds and it will adapt accordingly. So that's what's really clever about this little plugin we've got here. And it comes as standard in Logic, so it's really good. So let's just play it with 3 dBs of gain. I mean, ideally, or in theory, I should say, we've got 7 dBs to play with. So we can probably whack this up a bit more. So I'm going to play this to you now, on stock settings, if you like. Just need to switch that on. And what we're doing here, what this plugin is actually doing, is increasing the average volume. Not a little bit here and there, it's just the average volume. So you should see a bit of difference here, where it says -7.3, that should go up. And you'll also be able to see the input, which will be down here somewhere, and the output will be up here somewhere. You'll see the average output would have increased compared to the input. Let's have a look. So that's all great. We've got a much louder output now. Let me just do it before and after actually. So you can hear we've got a lot more sort of volume already, and you can see the average has gone up, and you can see on our meters the average has gone up as well. But we've got more to go here. We can go more, and you need to be quite loud if you want to compare to like the latest chart releases or something like that. They're very loud. Entirely up to you though how far you go with this. We've also got no gain reduction here. It's at 0 at the moment, so it's not actually limiting much at the moment. So we can push this more. I'm probably going to go up to about 7 or 8 dBs here. So you can see we're up to minus 1.8 now in the yellow or the orange almost. So we're a lot closer to 0 now. That's the peak. At the start of this chorus, there's a slight sort of peak, if you like. So I'm just going to double check that. See if we get any reduction. Yeah, so longer, you get minus 0.8 there. So we can perhaps go a touch more. We don't want to go, obviously, to 0. It's going to catch it if it does. It's going to catch it at 0.3, minus 0.3. And really, it's up to you how far you want to push it. You want to be also checking that the limiter is not having a detrimental effect to your mix. You know, it's not crushing the cymbals, it's not crushing the hi-hats or doing something funny to your kick. So just do a bypass every now and again. And you can always bounce this mix out with various different settings. Put them all on your studio monitors and, you know, do that thing where you go around, listen to the different mixes in different situations, and then you can choose the best one from there. So that's as much as I want to push it. We're up to minus 0.8. You could go a little bit more, of course. And although it's in the red, and I said stay out of the red at the very start of this course, this is the very, very final process. So we know that it's not going to go any more than this. So that's absolutely fine. You just don't want to be going over 0. So really all that's left to do now is to bounce the track out, and then we're finished. So to do that out, and bouncing down just means making this whole project one stereo file, so you can either upload it or share with your friends or whatever you want to do. So to bounce it out, you just need to make sure your cycle range is set. So we might want to set it just before we start and obviously at the end, but just make sure you've got enough on the end so you don't miss any end of cymbals or end of effects, that kind of thing. And then come up to File, Bounce Project. Now you can either have it as an MP3, which is what's ticked already, and you can set the quality of the MP3 here. 320 is the best. Very hard to tell the difference between 320 kbps and an absolutely uncompressed, lossless WAV or AAC. The MP3s these days are excellent. You can add your ID3 tags and stuff like that here if you want to for your streaming services. You can double check your start and end points here, and you can change them here by using these arrows. Just drag up or down if it's not quite as you wanted it. You can bounce in real time or offline. Offline is quicker. Tells you the space it's going to take up. Or if you want a lossless version, or both, you can tick both, by the way. Come to PCM. Lossless meaning it's not compressed. This is a slightly different type of compression we're talking about here, because up until now in this track we've been talking about dynamic compression, which is lowering the volume or compressing the volume. But in this situation we're talking about data compression. It's very different. It just means it can reduce the size of the file but still sound pretty good. That's what we're talking about here. So an AIFF or a wave, I'm not actually sure what CAF is. These two are lossless, which means they're not compressed, but you'll get a bigger file. And although this says 45 megabytes as well as this one, I have actually already bounced this out as an MP3 and it comes out about 8 megabytes, so this is not actually correct. So obviously choose the format you want to export your track as and click OK. And there we have it, guys. I really hope you've enjoyed this course and you've learned a lot about Logic and music production as well. Don't forget to check out our website, borntoproduce.com, where we have lots more courses like this for mixing and mastering and vocals and you name it, it's probably there. And we've just started doing some AnyDAW courses as well, all in different styles. So once you're familiar with Logic, then those courses should be really great for you as well. Okay guys, I'm Jay from borntoproduce.com. Thanks for coming on this course with me, and I'll see you in the next one. All the best. Bye bye.